Right, 8:26 Thursday morning. An internet troll was in court yesterday. He put his fingers in his ears, and then he stuck two fingers up at the court yesterday. He didn't want to hear the victim's statement, and he wasn't very pleased about the sentence that was handed down. When he was convicted of what was described as sinister stalking of a Brighton woman, he left court and gave them the fingers. Anyway, Nicola Brooks endured years of abuse at his hands, things like insults and sexually offensive remarks. Even this chap published her address online. And despite never actually meeting her, of course, this actually had a huge impact. Yesterday, Nikki Wright from London sentenced to 24 weeks in jail and an indefinite restraining order made to protect Nicola. We spoke to her earlier.
Because I live alone here and I knew he had my address. You know, some of the darkest days he was literally tweeting, having these rants about me for up to 10 hours continuously on Twitter, saying he was going to come to my home and confront me, he was going to do this to me, and he was like posting about rape and threats of violence to me. And I'm having to see this because I had to gather the evidence, so I'm having to read this. You know, victims don't have a choice. We have to read it, to screen cap it. Obviously, it didn't make everything worth it, but I was just so grateful for the acknowledgement of the seriousness of the crime, and hopefully it's going to encourage more victims to come forward and seek their justice as well.
Nicola Brooks there, and Steve Kuncewicz is a lawyer and social media expert. Hello, Steve.
Good morning.
It seems that you have to endure an awful lot just to gather the evidence in cases like this.
Well, unfortunately, that's right. There's actually quite a number of criminal offences that relate to what you do or don't do and how you behave on social media. And Nicola has a fairly long history of taking on trolls that have this kind of thing to say about her. But certainly what she's gone through just shows that the best way to gather evidence, unfortunately, is to screen cap it so you can take it to the police, because as much as there is Crown Prosecution Service guidance available as to how you deal with this kind of offences, I think it's fair to say that the demands upon the police have grown an awful lot more than they have over the last few years, and that training of officers isn't uniformly fantastic across different forces, probably for all the right reasons. So it's a horrible experience to have to go through, and probably an even more horrible experience to get to where she is now, where she's actually seen some justice done.
Nicola's been very critical of the social media companies as well, who haven't helped her to identify the people who are trolling her and abusing her. Why are they so unhelpful? You would have thought they would be the good guys in this.
You would, but I think they're starting to recognise now, Twitter is, and Facebook has as well, that they have an abuse problem. They have a trolling problem on their various different platforms, and they're certainly working a lot more with governments than they used to. There's talk of more regulation, there's talk of them doing more to monitor and deal with issues like this. But I think the problem is they're actually quite protected by the law, in that they don't have to proactively vet their communities until someone raises a problem. And it's that raising a problem, I think, that's an issue here, in that victims like Nicola would like to see more done and more quickly. From the legal perspective, they would normally need some kind of court order, or at least a very official request from the police to hand over details of who's doing the stalking. So they want to give the impression that they remain a free place that you can have these kind of conversations, and they want to try and keep away from being involved in cases like this as much as possible. But I think the way the web is changing may force them to rethink that approach slightly.
Right, okay. And one thing that surprised me slightly about this was that he was convicted of stalking. Is there no specific abuse of online trolling?
There's loads of offences. There's an offence under the Malicious Communications Act. There's an offence of using a public electronic communications network to send indecent, obscene or menacing messages. I think this particular case is marked out by the sustained nature of it and the seriousness of the conduct in question. You know, he used 25 different accounts, a number of blogs, a number of tweets over a number of years. So although prosecutions going this far are relatively rare, if they do get to this stage, then they do tend to be treated very seriously, as this one has.
And does the punishment fit the crime? I mean, some people might think 24 weeks as a sentence actually is pretty light.
Well, I think as well, many people, I think it's fair to say, don't necessarily appreciate the system of ethics that works around social media, because it's still quite a young ecosystem. as ever, people will have their comments on the sentencing, but it's certainly one of the more serious sentences that has been handed out for this kind of offence. So as we see more cases like this, and it's obviously unfortunate that we will, I think we'll probably see similar sentences handing out. But each of these cases are very, very fact specific.
Right. Okay. Really interesting. Thank you so much for that, Steve Kuncewicz, there, who's a lawyer and social media expert.